honestly don't think that there's anybody out there that I can't help fall pregnant at this point. And even if you're the oldest you've ever been today, you could still be more fertile than ever before. That is because doctors say, oh, it's just a random event. Chromosomal abnormalities are just random. It's like, how is that random? How is that random when you're here? When every single day your body syncs up with the sun, and when you get around other women, we sync up our cycles, or like the moon, like can influence how people feel. Like that's not random.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for your patience. Oh my goodness.
Good. You look amazing. You're like
Oh,
glowing. Have you had a good day? Busy day? What's going on?
busy day,
Yeah.
but so you got to stay positive, even on the days where it's just a bit tough. You just got to trust in the universe; it'll all work out, and it's fine.
Exactly. Okay, so welcome. This is called Tales of Transformation. And I'm basically having conversations with people who I think are doing things differently, who are rewriting the mainstream paradigm, challenging narratives that we've just taken on as, yeah, this is just how it is, and giving people a permission slip to evolve, kind of spiritually, in terms of their health, their well-being, the way they're living. No more, being like, life is just this 9 to 5 until you hit the grave, right? Like, there is so much more magic. There is so much more that we can do and experience, that we can live like fully, wholly, and actually have the things that we came here to have. So that's why I really, really, really wanted to have you on. So you are Dee Zibara. You're a natural fertility coach, and you work with hormonal health and all those kind of things. Can you tell us a little bit more about your kind of job description or your role?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I just like love the crap out of everything you just said. Um, and I think it's important that people live a life on their terms, and especially when it comes to how they're going to build and grow their family and what that's going to look like, and what that looks like in terms of mainstream media, and then what that looks like and how different that can be outside of mainstream. I should say the medical system. I said media kind of just as a, I guess as a, a trauma response maybe. I mean, look, yeah, we know that they're all in bed together. So yeah, so I am a natural fertility expert, and I have been helping women with their hormones for a really long time. So I've been doing this for 14 years now, and I just guess I saw so much success when it came to women who were trying to fall pregnant, particularly women who are suffering with polycystic ovarian syndrome, because that was also me, and just feeling like they couldn't get many places without going to a doctor and kind of being pigeonholed and then being given like treatment after treatment after treatment. And then that also like very much was relevant for even before wanting to have children, preserving their fertility in their, late teens and 20s and early 30s. And when I was 18, I got given a diagnosis of PCOS, and I was told that basically it was so bad I wasn't going to be able to fall pregnant unless I had IVF. And I don't know if it's like some stubborn-headedness in me or something. My gut was just like, no one's telling me that like my fate is set for me. Like if I know anything, I know I can change my destiny.
Yeah.
And so I kind of embarked on this whole journey, was able to change my own hormones, change my own life really, because we know if anyone suffers with either hormonal symptoms or hormonal syndromes, it really changes your whole life. And I actually heard this amazing perspective that your hormones are the framework of your personality. And I was like, that is so true. Because if you might not actually be a highly anxious person, that could just be your hormones, or
Yeah.
someone who looks on the, more negative side of life. You may not be skeptical and down. That just might be your hormones. And so all of these things that I, through my work, was able to help women with while trying to preserve their fertility so that they could get to a point in their life where when they decided to have children, that was an easy transition and it was a choice, which was huge for me. Like freedom of choice is huge for me, and it's one of the things I value most. So yeah, so that's kind of been my journey.
That's amazing. That's incredible. I love that because I think for so many people, this transition from, into motherhood, into parenthood, into creating a family is it's not unintentional because they may want to have a child, but they haven't created this inner ecology that's like really fertile and juicy and ready to conceive and grow and deliver and then beyond, right? And it's like you've thought about all of that.
That's right. And I think as well, you've actually given so much, anywhere you put energy, something will grow, right? And
Yeah.
where you cultivate intention and a level of respect as
Yeah.
well for yourself, for your partner, for that conception, for that moment,
Yeah.
that changes the game with everything. And where you set really kind of, sacred intentions, those are the things that create the most magic in your life and have the best overall outcomes. And so really, I guess when you're thinking about creating life,
Yeah.
you really got to be conscious of what is the state of yourself and your partner. What is it? What is that whole? What is the energetics? What is the physical culmination of that moment?
Yeah.
Because that is what is creating life. And I think
Yeah.
when we look at it that way,
Yeah.
it's not just oh, I'm pregnant. It's really respecting and honoring this transition, this
Yeah.
huge transition, not only for, a baby or a soul to go from the spirit realm,
Yeah.
to the human realm, but there's also that transition, and which is such a huge chapter of transition for everyone involved, for all souls involved. So it's a very big deal, and I think it's a big spiritual deal, it's a big
Mm.
physical deal, it's a big emotional deal to fall pregnant. And so I love that people don't really realize how much influence they can actually have. But once they do, once they
Mm.
create that perception, they are able to create, they're able to totally transform what their future could have looked like. And that is the exciting thing. That's the thing that I am like, this is incredible, like the opportunity you have right now. And I think for a lot of people, it creates some purpose with their pain. A lot of couples aren't able to fall pregnant and they just think to themselves, why us? Why is this taking so long? What's wrong with us? And sometimes it's just divine timing that if they had fallen pregnant before understanding this, things could look really different. And so I often find that, it's like this perfect intervention, this perfect timing of them kind of coming to this realization like, oh my gosh, all this time, this was the missing information that I needed. And now that I know that, and now that I can start to put that work into play,
Yeah.
I see now why the universe was preventing that from happening. It was
Yeah.
trying to show me that there was some more that work that needed to be done. And now,
Yeah.
being pregnant, it's too late to change fate. So they really have that opportunity. And yeah, and then it's normally like pretty swift and pretty quick because they're like, I'm ready to do the work. The solution comes, they've got the right guidance. And so off and away we go, which is so exciting. And it's like, this is like, honestly, I don't think there could be a better like job work
Yeah.
in the world. It's like the most rewarding thing ever.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh, I love it. And I too like feel that family creation is the most sacred thing that we can do in these lives if that's what we want to do. And I think lots of people, if they're lovely, kind, loving people, should really, really consider it. So I'm really excited that this is like your everyday. This is what you get to do. You get to see people literally find and create the most important thing that they will do in their whole lives. It's bigger than your career and whatever else, how much wealth and money and houses you buy. Like that is your child. You created that from nothing, from love, from energetically imprinting together with your person.
That's right.
Yeah.
You literally have created life from love. It is
Yeah.
the most mind-blowing thing. And I constantly look at my two children, and I will often say, whether I'm in public, whether I'm with family, whether I'm just with randoms, and I look at them and I say, I made you guys.
Yeah.
That still blows my mind. Like
Yeah.
human bodies, like we are so incredible. We are so amazing, but there is a lot to be said for what we can't see and
Yeah.
what we can't, taste, touch, smell. And so I think that there's also that side of things, that those energetics that have a massive role to play that people can often forget about. just because they can't see it, right? Or they can't,
Yeah.
taste it, hear it, smell it, whatever. So yeah, and it's such a sacred, beautiful thing. And when you have a child, literally, you realize nothing else matters.
Yeah.
Nothing else matters
Yeah.
except them, their happiness and their health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So one thing that I get asked a lot, I still have I'm a dentist, that's my day job. And I still work in a very mainstream kind of institution. So, I mean, I talk about the stuff I talk about. I have no filter on it. And people are curious, but they also really want to stick to the whole, mainstream paradigm as well. And some of my colleagues will ask me about, I want to have a child, or I want to have a second child. I'm just not ready. And then I'm going to be like almost 40. And then I think they're going to have like this problem and that problem and all these genetic mutations, etc. It's like, well, if you operate in the way that you have been, maybe, but maybe there's another way that makes you even healthier. And so what would you say to those women who are like, I want another one, but I'm just not there yet. And I want to create my child from the right energy, from the right mental state. And they're panicking. They're like, 30s, 40s, mid 40s maybe. What's the new narrative?
When someone's not ready, they're not ready, right? There's a matter of preserving their fertility. So there's a lot that you can do to preserve fertility, just so that when you are ready, that's an easy transition. And it's not met with a lot of resistance. It's not met with like problems and things that you have to troubleshoot and solve. Because once you make the decision that you want to fall pregnant, it's like it can be pretty all consuming, because it is such a big deal and it's such a big honor, and it's huge. It's huge. It's a huge decision to make. So, and again, like you said, everything else kind of falls away and that becomes the only thing. And people will spend so much money, time, energy, sacrifice so much when they want a baby, when they want to start a family. And so, I'm kind of here being like, okay, but like it can be easier. Just don't fall into the trap of thinking that it has to be like, you don't have to sacrifice your values or spend, money on, 3, 4, 5 rounds of IVF. There are other ways that it can be done that not only improve the ability to fall pregnant, but have a positive upswing and compounding effect on everything else that happens after that. So there's that. And then for people who are kind of ready and they are looking for, I guess, a different solution, what I think comes up so much for people is the fear. There is a fear of the unknown. And because the mainstream medical system is what most people know and grew up with, unless you're actively seeking a new world, you won't know that there are literally millions of people who you would have no idea are like the most alternative home birthing, like community, doing everything naturally. And it's not really something that you'll find unless you're looking for it.
Exactly.
So I think for a lot of people, a lot of fear comes up because they assume that like, oh, surely nobody else is doing this. And even as a little example, just a little example, I'm sure people will be able to relate to this. When I was 42 weeks and 3 days pregnant, I basically went to get an ultrasound and to see how everything was going. And, I didn't have to have ultrasounds, but I made the decision. I thought, yeah, I'm going to have an ultrasound. This is actually, 42 weeks and 2 days. And the sonographer said to me, wow, if you weren't this many days and weeks gestation, I would have no idea. Like everything is so healthy and so normal. And then I was like, oh, okay, great. So it's all healthy. She's like, yeah, but you should really like book in for a cesarean. And I'm like, wait, you just said everything was like healthy and normal. I feel good. I'm trusting my body. I'm trusting my baby. So why would you say something like that? And also, why would you mention, which she did, and a few people did to me, how much the stillborn rates like increase? And so I was like, that is so interesting. And if I bought into that, if I let, that narrative influence my own narrative, and my own narrative was trust your body, trust your baby. And just trust your body, trust your baby. And it's just really interesting when you look at the dynamics. Then I actually shared a reel on this day after this ultrasound, and I said, if anyone has any stories I'd like to share, I would love this reel to be an opportunity for other women in the future who are like overdue to be able to have this as a reference. You should see the amount of people who went over 42 weeks who were just flooding my feed with like, I was 42 weeks, I was 43 weeks, I was 44 weeks. And then it wasn't until I was looking for it that I was like, wow, there are so many other people out there who, when like they're looking at like my situation, being like, you got this, don't worry, but I wouldn't have known had I not been actively seeking it out. And so I think it just depends on where people are in their journey, because if you're actively seeking out certain things, that you will find them. You just kind of need to know where to look. And I think that because most people that people have been around or grown up around have just heard of this certain way of doing things, they kind of don't really know any other way. So it's not really people's fault that the fear comes up, because like they genuinely think that they're going to be tossed out on their own and have to like navigate it all themselves. And that's what I think is so exciting about the work that I do, is you can feel like that, but then you come into like Fertility Magic, my program, and you actually have a whole community of people who had maybe felt the same, with people who have 100% faith and belief that your dream is possible, regardless of your age and regardless of your journey so far. So yeah, I think there's a lot around mindset and a lot around belief as well.
What is the oldest couple in terms of chronological age? I'm not a big like age person. I'm like, your chronological age could be whatever, and like you could be as young as 25. Biologically, but chronologically, what is the oldest couple or oldest mother that you've supported in getting pregnant?
Mother, 43. And I have also had a client who has had 7 failed IVF rounds. 7. And then after working with me, within 6 months, fell pregnant naturally and has a daughter now.
Woohoo! I love that. That's so good.
Like, it's so cool to have those stats to just like defy odds, that kind of like blow people's minds a little bit, because it's just so possible, it's so possible. And something you mentioned before about just because you're older or you're a chronological age has nothing to do with your potential to fall pregnant unless you have finished with your periods.
And
even then, there are people who have fallen pregnant after they've gone through menopause. So let's just park that as a separate thing. But it really has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the level of inflammation, oxidative stress, nutrient depletion, DNA damage, mitochondrial damage, and all of that combined. And yes, that does have some correlation with the amount of years you've been on this earth. However, there is so much that you can do to reverse a lot of that. And I think for a lot of people, unless you know how to clear the slate of the body and kind of like almost physically and emotionally rebirth yourself, which is kind of how I see Fertility Magic, then you are going to be living with an accumulation of toxicity, an accumulation of negative mindset and negative thoughts and negative stories. And so it's the accumulation that often is what affects the sperm and egg quality. And then when those come together, the egg sometimes doesn't have enough basically energy left to balance out any of the damage of the sperm. And so you're kind of left with sometimes what's called chromosomal abnormalities. And that only occurs when you have high levels of like toxicity and high levels of inflammation, sometimes one party, sometimes both parties. And so it's when those come together, the epigenetics of that baby is so weak and so compromised that it can't last. Or you can't even conceive, because it's such a poor match, like a chromosomal, like poor match in terms of the genetic profile, that it doesn't even have a chance. So like, that's why there's like, I'm sure like people can see, oh, actually, if I just do the work before that moment, how much more I can influence and impact our future and our fertility.
Gosh, I love this. And so that kind of answers the question of when they're saying like, I'm so afraid I'm going to have a child that has a disability or an abnormality, a chromosomal abnormality. It's like, you can do things to optimize the genetics that you're passing on, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you absolutely can.
Yeah.
Not only can you influence the genetics, you can influence the epigenetics. And epigenetics is a whole, you know,
it's a whole field.
area,
Yeah.
a whole field of research that tells us that our environment, our diet, our lifestyle, our energetics, the non-physical stuff has an influence on how our body expresses the blueprint that we're born with. And then if we can optimize and we get the best of the best of our own genes, and then your partner gets the best of the best of their genes, or your donor, whatever, then when you put that together, you're going to get the best of the best with the best total profile, like epigenetic profile for your baby. And you're like solidifying the best outcomes possible for your child for their entire life. Children are forever things. So, you know, like, so really by the time they get to their fertility journey, you know, like 30 years later, you're actually optimizing that and influencing that from the moment of conception and the months leading up to that. Like, it's a really overlooked area.
That is such a powerful point, because if you're carrying a girl, she's got her little eggs in there. You know, you're carrying your grandchildren too.
That's right.
That is such an incredible point. Yeah. I'm like,
I know.
This is like, please just put her on like mainstream media and like scream this to the world. We can do this, people. Like,
I'm planning it. I'm planning it.
Good. Tell us more about the man's role, because I think that's often overlooked, and people think if they're having fertility challenges, it's the woman's fault. And if she's having miscarriages, it's her fault, and there's something going on there. And I think there's things coming out now that actually the kind of genetic stability comes a lot from the man. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so look, a lot of people say it's 50-50 in terms of it's 50-50, like the man and the woman, or the sperm and the egg. I still believe that the egg has a lot more power when it comes to, you know, I guess, correcting some of the potential damage. Now, that's not to say both parties shouldn't be putting in 100%. I still believe both parties should be putting in 100%. If you can get the best possible sperm quality and the best possible egg quality, then you've got a good match, the best match you can possibly have. But the interesting thing that research has sort of started to realize is that the average tests that have been done for many years for sperm quality, like the sperm, the shape, like, you know, the size and
everything.
Exactly. The amount of sperm and all that sort of stuff is such a zoomed out version of really what's going on. And it's so like quick. And so, it's too, it's not detailed enough.
Superficial, very surface level. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And so I'm trying to make this like as like non-techie as possible, so just people can just understand. So a guy goes to get you know, a sperm quality test done, and what they'll often do is they'll basically put their like sperm like on a like under a microscope, and they'll have a look and they'll go, is there a good amount? Yep. Are they wriggling around? Yep. Okay, cool. Are they like kind of the right shape? Yep. Okay, great. That's a tick. Now, we are much more lenient on the threshold these days than we were like 50 years ago. So these days, our standards have dropped a lot when looking for the like ticks to say, yep, everything's good, compared to what it used to be like, which is a little bit sad, right? We're like, oh, everyone's pretty sick, so let's just drop the standard. You know, like it's not great. And no wonder so many people are having problems, because they can't identify the problem enough to know that they need to work on it. So it's a whole broken system anyway. But the interesting thing is, like, as one example, when it comes to sperm and how it moves, sperm has to move, but it has to move what they call progressively. So let's just say, you know, someone is running a race. If they're running on the spot or they're running in circles, they're not getting to the finish line. So here is the problem that I think a lot of, you know, labs have started to realize, that they can take the same sperm sample and they can have a look at the way that they're moving and the direction that they're moving and their ability to progress to actually like travel. And then they can compare that with like just the movement. And so now they're starting to realize, wow, when we look at just the movement, it gets a tick. But when we use this test and we have a look at how it's moving, how quickly it's moving, if it's progressing in the right direction, if it's going in a straight line, i.e. right up into the uterus, like to, you know, where it needs to go, which is not an easy road, then that would not get a tick. And so now it's like, have we been telling people all this time that their sperm quality is good or okay, but actually it's not productive. It's not getting to where it needs to go. So it's really interesting. And even when they do IVF, they just take ones that run in a lot of circles. They don't know if that one is actually moving progressively. And so like, what does that say then for IVF outcomes? Like, you know, it's, I think knowing that, it kind of like puts everything into perspective, I think.
Yeah, because I think the stats for IVF aren't great, and that kind of explains why. It's because they aren't looking for the right things that are actually going to move the needle. And maybe if they did, the outcomes for IVF would be better if you did want to or need to go down that route.
That's right. And but you know what else that you can't replace? You can't replace, and maybe technology one day will replace this, but right now there is no way to replace the innate wisdom when an egg calls in the right sperm from millions of sperm. And the way that I like to explain this is, imagine you're like at a festival and there's like thousands of people and just someone catches your eye. And like just from across the crowd, and you can't explain it, but just that one person, like you just look at that one person and you just think like, don't know, there's something about you. That's literally what's happening when the egg attracts the right sperm. And that is what creates the best match. It's kind of like pheromones, you know, like when you're like attracted to someone but you don't know why, it's because actually you're the best genetic match. And that's what happens with the egg and the sperm. Wow.
It's like wild and it's magical. Like it's like we said, it's the energy of that moment. It's the entanglement that's happening at the kind of macroscopic level of like being two beings, and then the energy and then the microscopic level of like the little dance that the sperm and the egg are doing as well. It's like it's all happening on all these layers, and you want those layers to just like line up and align and just
I know. And like imagine like a lab trying to recreate that. Like it's never gonna have that level of mastery, you know?
And I guess like a lot of spiritual teachers will talk about this, that, you know, we're trying to, with AI and whatever technology we're coming up with now, which all has its place and it's incredible. It is incredible, but they're trying to recreate the model of different aspects of humanity, and you just can never do it the way that we have been created. It's like created by the hands of God, universe, creator, whatever you want to call it, but it was divinely orchestrated, and you just cannot replicate that level of magic.
I agree.
And yeah, that's essentially what you're saying. What would you say to women, men who are like, okay, I want to do one thing that's going to be a good choice for me to make now, that's going to help me preserve my fertility. They're not ready to do the whole fertility magic situation. They're not there yet. But maybe they're single and they're like, okay, I'm in the process. You know, I'm finding my person. What is the one tip that you give men and give women to preserve their fertility, their eggs, whatever, however you want to describe it?
I will say that obviously it would depend on the person, but overall, I think what people need to be focusing on is their level of inflammation. I think that that's plays a huge role. The reason that I say that is because obviously inflammation is going to create oxidative stress, and oxidative stress, whether it starts with a stressful thought or there's something stressful physically in your environment, like, you know, it's a parasite, it's a virus, it's a bug, it's endocrine disrupting chemicals, it's exhaust from an airplane, whatever it is, that combination will affect the cell on a cellular level. And what we want to do wherever we can, wherever possible, when it comes to fertility, is to reduce that oxidative stress, because requires so much more work from every system in the body. And especially when your immune system is in overdrive, that's when you start to get hormonal issues. That's when you start to get digestive issues. That's when you start to get mood issues. And all of that will then throw off hormones. And that's where you start to get those like really like deeper layers of hormonal imbalance that I find a lot of people come to me for. So it's not necessarily like just the hormones that are affected. It's the hormones are an indication that there are so many deeper layers that are affected. Yeah. And so often it's inflammation, which I know is like a bit of an umbrella term, but in every area of life, in every task, everything that you're doing for your well-being, holistically, whether it's physical or non-physical, it's about reducing inflammation and helping the body return to its blueprint, its original blueprint.
Yes. Yeah. And so for people that are like, okay, what actually is inflammation? I would describe it as kind of a lack of electrons and a buildup of charge. You're not neutralizing.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, go ground, get rid of your artificial light at night, make sure you're wearing
tank and water. Yeah.
all of the little tips. What are your kind of tips for people who are like, what is she talking about? What is this oxidative stress? What is inflammation? What are like your everyday switches?
Well, I would definitely say there's sort of 3 areas in terms of switches. And this is like the really like the 3 basic ones. And I feel like these are the ones that I have been most known for with my program called the Flow Fit Challenge, which I've done for many years. And we focus on 3 areas of health. And we look at lowering inflammation with our food, with our diet. So like choosing foods that are better at kicking up antioxidants or are full of antioxidants or help to dampen inflammation. And to just backtrack a little bit to answer your question as well, inflammation is one of 2 responses of the immune system. It's the first response of the immune system, and it can often get stuck in that first response, and we never get to the second response, which is resolution, because we often are bombarding our body so much with the first step that it can never get to the second step. And what it requires to get to the second step is that your body feels rested, digested, nourished, and calm. And so it doesn't have those 4 things. Your body gets stuck in the first response and it can't transition to the second response. And, you know, there's so many reasons for that we need another like 3 hours to go through that and unpack that. But the kind of like easy wins to help to reverse that as much as possible is, like I said, with your food, as anti-inflammatory a diet as possible. The Mediterranean diet is really helpful. And just depending on the person, I often focus on high protein diets, but again, it depends on the person. And that's, that can be whatever form of protein that works for you and that you like, because at the end of the day, amino acids are amino acids. Yeah. Which the broken down version of proteins. Your exercise, so your movement is so important for so many things, I mean, that's how we circulate nutrients, like our blood. So that blood flow, getting that blood flowing is really important. Getting our lymph flowing is really important for getting rid of the toxicity and the junk buildup. Oxygenating all of our muscles and our organs, and having like fresh blood move through our whole body, keeping our whole body so it's not stagnant. So many things. Building muscle is also really important, and that's really helpful as well for our mitochondria. So we've spoke about mitochondria before, which is super important for our cellular energy. So we look a lot at not only how to exercise, but also how to recover well with your exercise. So it's a matter of not over exercising, but exercising enough. For most people, that kind of looks like between 3 and 5 intentional sessions a week. But could also include, maybe you go for a half an hour walk every day. So there is different levels, and it does depend on the person and the age and all that. And then the third thing is balancing the nervous system. And I often say that there's 3 aspects to this. You already mentioned one, grounding. Why? Because the earth is full of electrons. Thermal imaging has shown us that being in contact with the earth and earthing and grounding and having your body in contact with grass, sand, rocks, dirt can reduce our inflammation tenfold. And just simply putting your feet on the sand at the beach, even if you're not doing anything else, even if you're scrolling on your phone, even if you are stressed out about something, is still going to have a large level of inflammation reduction, which is awesome. And then I often the other two that I say is meditation. Why? Because meditation allows us to drop into our body and breathe deeply. But it also helps to like positively brainwash us. So I mentioned like mindset earlier. And I think that we are so easily brainwashed and like not intentionally brainwashed in a negative way. So I feel like when we positively brainwash ourselves, it serves a purpose. It actually helps us. It builds our self-esteem. It builds our self-confidence. And so for that reason, I think that it's such a powerful tool to counteract the default of society more often than not. And it would probably depend on people's like environment and their circle of friends or connections or people maybe that they work with. And then the last like part of the third point is journaling. And I love journaling because it's a really helpful way for you to just stop ruminating about things, get it out onto a piece of paper. And sometimes you just get that perception where you just look at it and you're like, actually, like I either have a revelation and I actually can see why I feel this way about this situation. It's actually not this situation. It's a different situation I had before that I'm worried this situation is going to turn into. Or just having like a bit of a third party perspective with yourself. Like you have written those words, but then sometimes reading them back to yourself without judgment, with no fear that anyone else is going to judge you because you're just being honest with yourself on a piece of paper. It kind of like just allows you to get that perspective that sometimes you can't get even if you're with other people. So I love those tools. And then obviously there's additional tools that can help, but that requires other people to be involved. But those are the ones that I like for people, for themselves as individuals, that I think are so, so effective to just help dampen inflammation across the board, to help their body feel safe and to improve their mindset, their energetic, their vibration, and to be able to preserve their fertility and just balance themselves out on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I want to speak to the meditation piece a bit further, because in meditation, you're kind of going into a baseline beyond what your kind of normal operating system is. And you can like speak to yourself, even in your waking day, when people are saying, oh, I'm old now, I'm 30, whatever. It's like, no, you speak to yourselves and you tell them they're like 21. You walk around saying, I am 21. Every single one of my cells is 21. And they operate as if they were 21 in the most optimal way. Like your cells are listening to you. It's all consciousness, right? So stop speaking to your body as if it's old, and it won't be. I bumped into my high school chemistry teacher the other day, and she was like, you literally look the same. She was like, you look like a teenager. Like, what the hell? And I was like, I just go around saying that I'm 21 and like, this is how I will be for the rest of my life. And it's working. I mean, I'm sure.
Oh my God, I love that. It is a great hack, but that's like the energy that comes from is like you're saying, hey, I'm still full of life. And so your cells are like, okay, she's still full of life. Let's act accordingly, because that's that level of belief. Sometimes people are so crazy in their belief. They're so strong in their belief that like the world just like happens around their belief. Like it's just so rock solid. And there's just so much to be said about having that like unwavering confidence and how much that changes what your reality actually like looks like. So that is so cool. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. It's the field around the cell, right? The cell is responding to the field around it. And also meditation allows you to feel the emotion of having achieved the thing, right? Like feel the feeling of like seeing that pregnancy test with the, the yes, or feeling your baby, like bring yourself to your knees with that amazing feeling of having your baby in your arms before your baby's here. Like condition your body to know it's happened, and it will conform.
Absolutely. Like those moments in time that you plant in your mind doesn't know the difference between it actually happening and it happening in the future. But the world will conspire and the universe will conspire to make that happen when you have unwavering belief that it is possible. So I think that's a major thing for people. They need to know it's first possible. If it's possible for someone else, it's possible that it's possible for them. And that's where it starts. And then it's like, okay, then they like talk to someone like me and like they actually have a conversation. And I'm like, okay, here is your health history. Here's why we're at where we're at right now. And here's where we need to go. All good. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's totally possible. And they're like, it's possible for you? Like, yeah, it's possible for you. And that's where it like it gets that level of belief then steps up, because it's like someone like me can actually look and see and say, yes, for you, tick, yes, it is possible, 100%, no like doubt in my mind. So let's go, like, let's do the work. And then it's like, okay, it's not even a question now if it's possible. Now it's just, how do I do this? It's the how, not the if, you know? Yeah. It's awesome. It's awesome.
What I love about your perspective, because I follow a lot of fertility accounts just because I love the idea of people having families. So I'm just a little obsessed. But yours is very different because it's looking at not just one thing. So there's the fertility nutrition people and the fertility, just don't be stressed. But you're actually saying, look, there's little angles to this circle, and we just plant a seed in all of them, and then we just watch it grow. That's all it is. And you kind of you touched on mitochondrial health, and something I heard is that the female egg is the cell in the body that is most densely populated with mitochondria in the whole body.
Yeah.
So mitochondrial health and understanding kind of cellular energy is super important. And I feel like you covered that.
Yeah, we absolutely do. So we do everything from every natural angle to ensure that our mitochondria is like fully charged.
Yeah.
And there's as much mitochondria as humanly possible in the body, because you can influence the amount.
Okay. And are you a promoter of supplements? Is that something that you're a big fan of? How do you look at that? Yeah.
It depends on the person. So often when I have clients, we first start with a personalized fertility assessment. That fertility assessment allows me to figure out what we need to do to get them from where they are to ready for the kind of biggest part of the program, which is where we start detoxing the body. And we detox the body physically, and we also detox emotionally. So there's like a whole spiritual journey. It's like the whole thing. And so sometimes supplements serve a really like big purpose, depending on the person and depending on what they've got going on. And for other people, it's more of an emotional readiness. But often I find people are quite emotionally ready. They're like, you just tell me what to do. We're here, we're ready, we want this baby, let's go. So it'll just depend on the circumstance and the actual person. When it comes to mitochondrial health, there's no one perfect way, there's no one perfect supplement, there's no one thing you can do. Why? Because we are not one-dimensional beings, and we have many, many systems that are relying on each other at all times, that are always communicating with each other. So there's all of these different ways I think why my programs are so strong is because if I was to only rely on one way, how am I getting people like holistically faster to that one goal if I'm only addressing one thing out of the millions of things that the body is requiring, and like in the way that it's communicating constantly? So if I was to for a little while I thought, oh, maybe it's just a fertility diet, or maybe it's this, or just maybe it's just stress management, but it's all of those things. And when it can be all of them without feeling overwhelming, then actually the synergy of working on a whole bunch of things at once, but nothing too extreme, creates a sense of balance for the person themselves, and actually has another like compounding effect, because every piece of the puzzle that you put together, even if you don't do one thing perfectly, because you've got a whole bunch of other things surrounding it actually creates a huge transformation without it feeling like it's really hard, because all of the things rely on the other things. Like, for example, the way that you eat will influence the way that your nervous system feels, and the way that you train will influence the way that you eat. And so, and then you've got like the detox supplements, and then the way that you eat will help to support phase 2 liver detoxification, to make sure that those toxins are removing from the body. And so there's all of these like parts of the puzzle that have to play together 24/7. And if we only focus on one thing, I think that that's setting us up for failure. And I think that that's when programs become very strict and feel very restrictive for people. It's like they think, oh my God, if I don't do this one thing, the whole thing fails. And that's not the case, especially because each person will be slightly different. Some people will always do the workouts and always get the movement in, and some people depends on their job or depends on their life. And so that's where I think, I think that's where the strength of my programs has always been, and why people have always said to me, oh, it feels like magic, and where Fertility Magic got its name, is because it's never putting too much pressure on one aspect. And that's the cool thing about it. And they all kind of interplay with each other. But the program is set up so it's like, I already did all the thinking and all the putting of the pieces together to make sure that all people had to do is just follow. And it was addressing all of those interconnections without them really feeling like it seemed overwhelming.
Yeah. It's really interesting because it reflects like what it takes to raise a child. You know, it takes a village. And it also takes a village to create, but the village doesn't necessarily have to be all these people. It can be all these little components and these aspects of like diet and light, you know, the right light environment and the right blah, blah, water and the right blah, blah, blah. So everything is just mirrors, you know, different aspects of life. It's always.
I love that. I love that. I've always said it takes a village. And I'm always such a believer of that, especially like with raising my kids. I never feel like I'm the only person who can ever teach my daughter things about being a woman, or, you know, like it's just that's putting too much pressure on like one individual or one part of the system. It's about the interconnectedness. It's about the community. It's about the village. So that's such a cool point. I love that reflection.
Yeah. I'd love to ask you about something you shared on, I think it said women over 40 are more, who have their first child over 40 are more likely to live to 100. Why do you think that is? Like, what's going on there?
I am positive, not that the study showed this because it didn't actually like show why, but I am positive I know the answer to that, just like intuitively, like being a mom and knowing what that is. I feel like when your kids are, okay, so let's just say that you were 40. By the time you were 70, you've got kids who are starting to have grandchildren.
Yes.
Your kids are starting to have kids, and you're starting to have grandchildren. And then by the time you get to near 100, you've got the chance of actually meeting your great-grandchildren, or like being in their lives, right? And so I actually think, and I actually saw a really funny meme that was like, that was around that, and it was like, you're trying to die, but then one of your kids still needs you. But it's like, it's actually like, I get that. And also like people are waiting around to be part of their great-grandchildren's life, to just see them, to meet them, to be excited for them that they're pregnant. I genuinely believe that, you know, the human spirit defies all odds when it comes to, you know, and so I believe that. And I think of myself, I'm like, if I was 100 and I knew that I had a great-grandchild coming, or a great-grandchild that was like little, that I wanted to like spend a little bit of time with and just like be in their energy, I would make sure I was alive until 100, like 90 or 100 or whatever, you know? So I think that, I think what's so beautiful about that is that's love that's keeping them there. Nothing but love.
Yeah, totally. I felt the same, actually. I had the same thought process. And I also added that perhaps women who are having kids in their late 30s or 40s, either intentionally or not, they are more likely to have been living intentionally. They're more likely to be the ones that are working out, that are eating well, that have developed their career, so they've got the money to go buy organic and get the best water and whatever. So I think that might play a role too.
Absolutely. Like there's that aspect of possibly they've had their career first, they've set themselves up better financially, and so that they can not only be very present with their kids and not have to worry too much about the juggle as much. I mean, I feel like it's always a juggle, but as much. I definitely agree with you with that. Like I definitely think that if they are getting to that age and they are choosing to have children, it's because they're like, we've got all our ducks in a row. The last piece is that baby. Like we're so ready and we're going to be so here and so present. We've got life worked out. We're so ready. I think that definitely has a big role to play as well.
And we say we say we're so ready, but there are a lot of women who wanted to have kids in their early 20s, and you know, they met someone and it was just not the right match, and they could have just been like, I'm just going to go ahead with this because I want to start my family. And in some cases, we're like, I shouldn't do this because this is the man that's going to be by my side or not. when I have these children and they made the choice to wait. And, before they know it, they're in their 30s and maybe their later 30s. And, it's that regret, it's that sadness of like, I wanted to be a young mum. Not that we believe in chronological age, but, they had this vision for themselves. And sometimes infertility isn't actually the struggle with actually creating that child and holding that child, but it's finding that person to have that child with. That is the piece that's making them infertile. What would you say to women who are in that phase of like, they want to attract the right person, and because you're a mom and you have a beautiful family, your kids are so cute, by the way, they're adorable. What would you say to women?
So, but I'm biased.
Yeah, you're biased, but like objectively speaking, they are very cute. What would you say to women? Because I always say, because I support women in finding their person, etc. And I say to women, you're not just choosing for yourself. Like you are choosing for your children. You are choosing the person who you will entangle with and create that spark of light as that sperm and that egg meet. Because it does. Have you seen it? Like it creates a lot. It's like literal magic. And he will support you through the sickness or the whatever happens during pregnancy, whatever kind of pregnancy you have. And if you want to birth in an alternative way, or if you want to birth in hospital, but you need someone by your side saying, do not induce her or do not do whatever. She does not want that. You need someone that's on your team, like that's your rock. You are not just choosing for you, you're choosing for your child. But would you, like, what thoughts do you have around that? Because I think that is a part of the infertility problem.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say because some people have a village and they might not have a partner, like a male partner, but they have a village. And so I just think it depends on, like, from a purely physical point of view, it's most ideal to have a healthy sperm and a healthy egg. But if you're getting a donor, if you're wanting to do it on your own and you're like totally ready for that, there is a level of like unknown when it comes to the sperm, because someone can say that they're healthy, but Lord knows, because there is just not enough regulation around like donors and things like that. I think I've watched a Netflix documentary that's just scarred me for life, and it's like a man with 1,000 babies or something like that. Oh my gosh, don't watch it. Nobody watch it. But yeah, like I think I totally understand where you're coming from. And that is ideal, right? It is so ideal. And it's all a timing thing, right? I think everyone has their own journey and their own, like their own lessons to learn in life. And I feel like when you're ready to become a parent, you just know when you're ready. And even if you're a little bit scared, you still know. And so when you either decide to do it on your own or decide to, get a donor, if you're single and you're waiting, like I think that baby is going to be so loved anyway. Really all a baby needs is love. So like as long as it's got the love and you're ready, you're strapped in for the ride, which a parent will be. When you have a baby, you just something shifts and you are a superhuman. It's just how it happens. But then for other people who are waiting, I totally understand that people are waiting for that other person, because I do think it's really important that children have a village, but also a male role model and a female role model, at least primarily, so that they can understand the world through both energies. That said, not every male is sitting in a balanced feminine masculine energy as it is. So there's so many layers, right? There's so many layers.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's actually a beautiful point, because thank you for speaking to the fact that some women are going to choose to have a donor or do things in a different way, and that totally, like, if that's what you want, like if that's what you want and that's what works, because the last thing you want to do is having felt like you waited forever and then it's passed, and then
that's right.
Like if I have a friend who has a friend who did it in that way, and this child is gorgeous, and she moved back in with her mum and dad, so the village is there. She's got her grandparents, so she's got that masculine, feminine, balance, and probably very balanced and grounded grandparents now, because they've done it all. They've done the frantic life. They're here to be grandparents. Like, she's got it, she's got it all. Like, and they're so happy, right? They're so happy, and it's enough. Sometimes it's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly right. Sometimes it's enough, and it's exactly what that baby wanted. So that baby is coming into that dynamic, knowing that's what they're coming into, because that is what they need.
Yeah.
And who are we to,
Yeah.
who are we to say what their journey is on this world is going to be or is meant to be? So, because sometimes it's so easy for us to feel guilt, like I should have done this or I should have done that. But it's like, it's always divine timing. It's always exactly as it's meant to be, even when you're not sure.
Yeah.
There's always a bigger plan.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned it earlier, that the role of love is just, it's so priceless. You can't put a number on it. It's just, and that love can be beyond that, marriage, partnership, whatever. It can be just this field of love that you are intentionally cultivating. You've got your parents or your wider family, your siblings, your nephews, your nieces, and they are all going to create this little ball that this baby is, your soul child is like, yeah, that's exactly what I need. Let's go and expand this soul through that family, because that's the one that I want.
Yeah.
Oh, so cute.
I know. They're so wise.
They're so wise.
Beautiful things. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's remembering the role of your child as a teacher as well. Like to surrender. And I guess that's a part of the fertility journey, to completely surrender. Yeah. I should have asked this at the beginning, but a lot of people misunderstand fertility as this forever label or like life sentence. So, if they're told they're infertile, tell us about like what infertility actually means, because it's not a permanent life sentence.
It's a great point. That's a great point. Sterility is different to infertility. Infertility is when a doctor asks you, how long have you been trying to fall pregnant? If you're under 35, you say more than a year. If you're over 35, you say more than 6 months, and then you're considered infertile. And it's just such a transient label. I know. It's such a transient label. It's almost like a bit of a throwaway label. I know that obviously, like, I talk a lot about fertility and infertility, but basically it's a spectrum, right? It's where you are on the spectrum. And even if you're right at the end where, you've been trying for 6 months or you've been trying for 8 years, like one of my clients, you can still move on that spectrum. It's just with the right guidance at the right time when you're ready, with the right program. I honestly believe that. And I've seen that over and over and over and over and over, so much so that I'm like, I honestly don't think that there's anybody out there that I can't help fall pregnant at this point. Like, sure, there'll be someone out there, maybe, possibly, but it's just when you can trust in the human body and the human spirit, and you can put all those pieces together, and a person is ready, there is no roadblock left. There's nothing left. But sterility is different. And sterility, like, I can't really comment and say that I've ever met anybody who says that they're sterile. I wouldn't imagine they would even, if someone truly believed that they were sterile, which is like zero chance of conceiving, if someone really believed they were sterile, they wouldn't even take the action to come into my field. So I've never come across anyone who's, said that they're sterile, but it's about 2% of the population. Statistics show that of people who just like definitely, apparently can't have kids. I don't work with them, so I can't comment on that, but that's what the statistics say. Fertility is not a, yes or no. It's a spectrum. You're not like fertile or infertile, you're just more fertile or less fertile at the time. And there's many different systems that want, like, at that interplay, that will show you how fertile or infertile you are. And there's ways of identifying what might block fertility. And then there's ways of identifying, whether, like, where you kind of stand. And then just finding out, it's literally just like, I just see it as, I just remove roadblocks for people. That's how I see it. I understand the body on a cellular level, but I also understand the energetics. And I think that's where a lot of things are missing. Like a lot of I don't really see a lot of fertility specialists kind of talk about things so holistically, or recognize that there is a physical and a non-physical answer to every question.
Yeah.
And both are valid and both are real.
Yes.
And so I think that's what fascinates me so much, is that sometimes science can't fully explain things. And there's just that level of, well, we are energetic beings. We are 99.99% space. How do you, account for that? You can't. And so it's kind of like, understanding those kind of two worlds. I sort of see it as like two worlds, even though it's like, it's what we see and what we don't see.
Yeah. I think I've heard you say this, or I may have imagined it or said it myself and decided you said it, but
I'll take credit. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, take credit. That your fertility, your ability to reproduce, isn't separate from your actual health. People will say, I'm healthy, but I can't seem to be able to get pregnant. I'm like, because your body is telling you something. That is, and it's like saying, I'm healthy, but my heart doesn't beat. It's just that one thing. Tell me more about, did you say that, or was that me?
Look, whether you said it or I said it, I wholeheartedly agree. And I don't like to come across like, someone believes that they're doing the right things and they're working really hard. And for me to come in and say, you're not healthy as you think you are, I don't, really conscious to like not come in with that perspective. But at the same time, I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Your fertility is not separate from the rest of your health. It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
Like your endocrine system is part of your body. And your cardiovascular system is part of your body. There's no separation of like, my eye doesn't affect my foot. Like, you have nerves that run and touch every single part of your body at every single time. You have fascia that is going to be affected. You got a tight foot and you've got a sore shoulder. Like, do you know what I mean? Or like this organ doesn't work as well because of that injury down there, So I think that there's so much interconnectedness within the body and within the systems of the body that there's no separation. And that's why I think I sort of, I look more at well-being and the holistic well-being of a person, because even someone might say to me, oh yeah, I'm super healthy. And then I might question them about, okay, how do you perceive the stress in your life? And they're like, oh, I'm a 10 out of 10 stressed. And it's like, okay, so you're telling me, if we go back to physical and we just keep it super physical, you're in your fight or flight response 24/7, but you're healthy. That can't be. So yeah, so I 100% agree with you in that a lot of, depending on how you classify healthy, would probably depend on whether you believe you're healthy or not. But I believe if you are truly healthy, you will have no issue falling pregnant. And so that's not to make people feel bad that they're not healthy. That's just to say you are working so hard doing a few things that you believe will get you to where you need to go. You just need to shift that focus to these few things.
Yes.
Because they're willing to put in the work, they're willing to do the research, they're willing to be committed and to work on what they need to work on. They're not afraid of doing the work. It's just that they sometimes have the wrong information, the wrong resources, or the wrong guidance. And that's where I think simply when you just shift your focus and you're open to a different way of doing things, you can put the same intention and the same energy and you get completely different results.
Yeah. I think I really love that. And I really, really respect your approach of, not putting the blame on the person, because most people are really trying their best. They're really trying their best and they think that it's a thing that's going to move the needle. And sometimes you just are missing this tiny bit of information. So just for anyone that's listening that thinks, oh my God, I'm not healthy or I'm doing it wrong. It's like, no, it's okay. It's totally
Yeah.
fine. You just need the right piece of information and then everything changes. And also to the point that, I often, go into the topic of like mainstream medicine and whatever. And again, we're not saying that those doctors are bad or anything like that. They're operating from the level of knowledge that they have. And you know what? It works for thousands, millions of people. And that's amazing. That's great. Like, keep doing it if that's what you want to do. But this is for those who are like, I want something different. And so here, there are people who are doing it differently to satisfy that need.
That's right. And I don't believe that people are or have ill intentions. I really don't.
Yeah.
I believe that, yeah, I believe that everyone's doing what they can with the best intentions, with the
Yeah.
knowledge that they have available to them. And I think that, our world exists where we're all like kind of just bump into each other's,
Yeah.
knowledge and boundaries, and that's
Yeah.
just life. Um,
That's really
but I
good.
think that's so beautiful that you mentioned that because, yeah, people are genuinely, they're trying so hard. It is such a huge emotional roller coaster, and people genuinely think that there's something wrong with their body, that they feel like, oh, I'll never work this out. I'll never be able to figure this out. And it's really like, it's so beautiful and it is so rewarding when like someone calls me in like tears or like it's happy tears or like might send me a voice message or I'm pregnant, and it's like, yeah, we showed them mainstream medicine. No, but I think it's the system. I think the system is broken. I don't think like individual people
No,
have bad
yeah, I
intention.
agree.
I just think that
Yeah.
the system works well enough. It
Yeah.
works well enough, but then there
Mm.
are a lot of people who just want more. They want more. They don't want to survive. They want to thrive. They don't want a good life. They want a great life. They
Yeah.
want the most out of things. They want to tap into their full potential and experience life to its fullest. And that I think translates to the kind of people who are tend to be drawn to me and my work.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice. And I think I don't know if you will share this belief, but I think your transmission or any healer or someone that works in different aspects of healing, creating, whatever, their transmission matters too. Like, you truly believe this is possible and you're holding that vision for them in those moments where they don't. And it's like, the field is there, like, I'm holding this. And so
Yeah.
when they do just go, but what if it does? What if I'm the only one that it doesn't happen for? And you're like, it's possible. Come on, like, you've got this. And that just helps them kind of resonate once again with that frequency of them actually creating life and giving birth and all of the rest of it.
Yeah, there's such a huge piece. Like my role is
Mm.
to just make sure that I am communicating the unwavering faith I have in them,
Yeah.
in their ability to do this, and their ability to go from I can't fall pregnant for 8 years or I've had 7 failed cycles to go, none
Yeah.
of that matters.
Yeah.
None of that matters.
Mm.
And even if you're the oldest you've ever been today, you could still be more fertile than ever before. That is possible. And that's exciting. That's where the magic is.
That is where the magic is. I love that. You could be more fertile today than you were 10 years ago because now you're
Mm.
doing intentional things to optimize the health of that egg and that sperm and the way it expresses and the way it's capable of feeling attraction for that fellow sperm and calling it in. It's just got clarity. It's got
Yeah.
like 2020 vision.
That's right. It's got clarity and it's got energy.
Yeah.
It's got energy. Like little humans require a lot of energy. And
Yeah.
so they want to come into a certain frequency. So it's our job to raise our frequency and transform our inner landscape, our inner environment, so that it is the perfect environment to be able to grow a whole nother life. Like that's a huge deal. It's like such a special thing. And so, yeah, it's just when there's just a few tweaks that need to be made often in people's lives, for them to just like get like ready for the journey. And then they just like step through the process and then they come out at the end and it's like, wow, I feel bloody amazing. Having a baby feels really fun now. It felt
Mm.
like chore before. Now we
Yeah.
get to like play and like, like just feel like light and have that like beautiful energy where like that life can be created. Like
Yeah.
it's so beautiful, it's so different and it's so beautiful.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I think the thing that's really stood out for me that you said today is that not only are you improving your own fertility, you're doing that for the child that you're creating. Now I'm like, okay, like when you raise a child, it's like, making choices and filtering it through, is this supporting their health, including their future fertility? Like what foods and is it local? Is it seasonal? Have I got them on the ground? Have I done all of these things? Am I keeping their inflammation down? Not from a stressful place, but because you get to, because that's how we optimally express. So not only is this for you, it's for your child and for your grandchild and for your great grandchild. Like this is generational work, is what I'm
It
hearing.
is
Yeah.
100%. You're so right. Yeah, it is.
Amazing. Amazing. So I'd like to give you a chance to talk a little bit more about your program. Would you say it's for couples who are ready to go and have their baby, or would you say it's for maybe individuals who want to kind of clear the slate and do all the things in preparation for in a few years? Like, when is the best time to do this with you?
It's the best time to do it. And look, I just find for the container, for the energetics of the container, it is most optimal for people to be ready.
Yeah.
Like them and their partner, they are ready. They've tried all the things and nothing has worked. They are so ready.
Yeah.
They're willing to invest their time, their money, their energy
Yeah.
into it's almost sometimes like a last ditch attempt where they're kind of like, like maybe one of them is like, has a question, is this even possible? Like, is this possible for us? And it's just like that, you know what? I'm holding on to this last bit of hope because for me, that's the most exciting client. Because for me, those are the people I help the most. Now, does that mean that like anyone can do it? They absolutely can.
Yeah.
But I think there's a difference between when you have couples who are so ready, they're so
Yeah.
ready for this, and they've been ready for a while, and you have someone who's like, I could fall pregnant today or I could fall pregnant tomorrow. It's not the same container. And so I
Yeah.
like to keep it to people who are really like, you know, they really need that guidance. They just need that, they need that guidance. It's really what it is. They want something that is comprehensive, something that is proven, and something that doesn't feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
And they are like, they're energetically, like they are so committed. There's like not, they're not like, oh, I could do this, but then, it's like, no, they are in
They're
this.
all in.
They're all in. They're
Yeah.
all in, and rain, hail, or shine, they're all in. But they're all in and they're committed
Yeah.
and they're willing to also be human and also live life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's about helping them navigate through that and have the program be part of their life without disrupting their whole world and without disrupting their whole life, but also preparing them for like creating those skills and really like remodeling their mind so that at the moment that they do fall pregnant, they have all of these transferable skills for pregnancy, for birth, and for the postpartum period. So that is like really important and really essential because even what you were saying before, for someone who doesn't do, they don't eat seasonally, they don't ground, and they don't do those things. If you don't have those habits before you have a child, that's going to feel really different. That's going to feel really hard and that's going to feel really new. And on top of looking after a new human child, which in and of itself is a big deal and takes up a lot of like time and energy and love,
Yeah.
you're basically going to kind of by default end up probably having them be part of the world that you already live in. And so
Yes.
it's not going to shift all that much because you're probably going to be in like some level of survival for some period of time just to try to navigate through all that newness. And that's the roller
Reality.
coaster
Yeah.
journey, And I feel like being able to create those habits before they arrive
Yeah.
is so crucial and have those habits while pregnant, whether you're the male partner or the female partner, you're already cultivating that whole body healthiness and happiness not only for yourself, but you're imprinting that experience on your baby, even though your baby is like in your womb. You're still imprinting, they still understand the lifestyle. So they're going to come in and be like, oh, this is how you become human. This is how you live life. This is how you do it. And they're experiencing that like the entire time. So setting up those habits prior is not only going to be beneficial for you before they come into the world, but is also going to be beneficial for them before they come into the world. And then once they're in the world, you know the rhythm, they know the rhythm because they've been experiencing it through you. And it just becomes a much easier transition, and you're able to address all of their most basic needs without it feeling really hard or feeling really new, because you've cultivated that understanding, that education, and those skills. So they get into the world and you're able to help them thrive, because babies need light, air, sun, like they need all those things, you know, they need love, they need all, but they need all of those basic things more so than anything. So until you respect the shift that needs to be made from all the stuff to all the foundational stuff, like your baby won't be able to thrive, nor will you, because you're just basically a big baby. You know, we all need the same things. We all need the same stuff, you know, a big baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We're giant babies. Like,
You're a giant baby.
love, give me water, give me sunlight. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
What would you say to a couple who is just about to invest in IVF for the first time, for the millionth time? And, you know, they hear this and they're like, I'm just about to, like, what would you say to be like, hello, come over here? Would you say that? Would you say go for the IVF and then come back if you're ready afterwards? Or
if I could, I would say, why? Why are you doing IVF? And I'm sure if they really thought about it, they can't really say anything except they're just getting really impatient and they're really, really, really ready for a baby. Because there aren't many cases for IVF other than it can, not always, 66% of the time won't, actually give them the result that they're after anyway. And then after it, they're going to have to recover their body from all of the, you know, medication and drugs and possibly surgery anyhow. So my question to people would really be, why? And if you look at it on a holistic level, looking at the time spent, because often it's a time thing. It's not often money. It's often a time thing. They feel like they're running out of time, and it's sold as a quick fix. It's sold as a quick answer to solve the problem, but it's not really solving the problem. It's actually, the problem is still there, but sometimes they are able to make a match that is okay enough, that is adequate. But do you really want an adequate start of life? You know what I'm saying? And I often get the, you know, the comment, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can give you 5 months. The program is 5 months. Fertility Magic is 5 months. I don't know that I can give you 5 months. But when you look at how long it will take for them to monitor your cycle, for them to give you all of the medications, for them to do the egg retrieval, for them to do the transfer, you're kind of already sometimes looking at 3 months. And then if it doesn't work, which 66% of the time it won't, which is more than half, then, and I can't even, you know, comment totally on those statistics either, then you're, you know, like there's still a chance that it doesn't work. And then you're going to have to recover your body, get back that health, get back that hormonal balance. And you're still not only not with a baby, but actually worse off hormonally. And so it's like becomes a really like negative spiral. And then if we also look at IVF rates, you know, children who are born of IVF do have worse health outcomes. They actually do. Now, there's not a lot of research on this, but of the research that's come out, it's showing that there are a lot of like epigenetic influences on kids that have IVF. And I think we are yet to see the true impact of that, you know, because IVF isn't all that old, right? So I think that we're still yet to see a whole, I guess, you know, a whole generation of kind of IVF babies and the kind of worser outcomes because we haven't given them a good start to life from the very beginning. And often if we don't have the tools to heal ourselves, it's more rare than it is common that we then happen to figure out the right tools to help them thrive. Because remember, we are just giant babies. It's the same thing that we have to learn. It's the same tools that we need. So if we don't have that, cultivate that skill set before they come into the world, and they come into the world, but we're still struggling and we're still suffering, then you can see how that becomes a really kind of like not only a worse pattern for, the parents, and in the way that the parents feel about their children and the way they feel about themselves and their own health impacts as well, but like for that child too, like that's the environment that they're growing up in, that's the genetic profile that they have, and it is weaker and more compromised than it could have been.
Yeah.
And so it's, it's about looking at that and saying, are you really willing to settle for that as an outcome?
Yeah.
Like, are you happy with the odds of that? How does that sit well with you? Does it sit well? And for most people, when they really look at it in its entirety and they see that that time frame is not all that different from doing fertility magic, it really puts it into perspective. And like one client that I have basically said to me, she did say specifically these words. She's like, Dee, I don't know if I can give you 5 months. And she's gone through the program, and I'm sure by the time this comes out, it will be okay for people to know, but she's already fallen pregnant. So yeah, I know. Yeah.
So where are people typically falling pregnant? Whilst they're doing the program or after they've completed it?
Look, ideally they fall pregnant like once they've completed the program, because the program really goes deep. But at the same time, is it the worst outcome that they've already like started to like work on their health and be healthier enough to actually fall pregnant? Not a bad outcome at all. Like at the end of the day, like that the pregnancy is what we want. And a lot of the energetics and a lot of the kind of like nutrients and mitochondrial influence and the DNA influence is still, in the first trimester of pregnancy, is still something that we're working on anyhow. So yeah, it's exciting, and it's so great, but I often think to myself, things do happen quite quickly. I don't like to set the expectation for people that like you start today and then tomorrow you're going to fall pregnant, but there is something to be said when you feel 100% like held, and you're like, okay, I know that I found the right answer for me. I know that this is going to work. The universe just says, yeah, it's going to work, and it happens very quickly.
Yeah. What about couples who have managed to get pregnant, who maybe had a complication that led to that pregnancy not following through? Does your program support with things like that so that doesn't happen again?
Yeah. And one thing I think is like probably like the most common thing is people having miscarriages due to chromosomal abnormalities. That's probably the most common thing that I hear across the board. And it's that we are working so much on. We are really working to minimize that chromosomal abnormality, because again, what we're looking at is an inability of the sperm and the egg to be of its highest quality. We're looking at the mitochondrial influence of the egg not being able to overcorrect, which it can do. Yeah. It can overcorrect and it can fix the sperm. It can actually fix it, right? And so if you've got a woman who's like has so much mitochondrial energy and has a really good quality egg, even if the sperm was not 10 out of 10, it can still correct it to make it a viable embryo and be able to continue the journey. And what I almost always find is that when you have people who I consider in my classification, not that healthy and not that healthy on that kind of deeper root level, like that holistic viewpoint, the body then tries to have this like mishmash of trying to create the best genetic profile. But it's kind of got the really like the hardest job ever, because it's like, well, there's not much good we can do here with all of this. We can't really make much of this. And so that's where those like genetic chromosomal abnormalities start to happen, because the body doesn't have all of the nutrients, all of the information, the genetic information that it needs to be able to create a very healthy pregnancy. And so there's sometimes things like missing, or there's sometimes just not enough of something or a lack of something. And so it's when the body like the egg and the sperm try to come together, that they just have this, there's just not enough energy, there's not enough nutrients, and it's not enough for them to come together and to be able to pass a threshold where not only does it become an embryo, but it actually implants, and you actually have enough progesterone, say, to get to when the placenta starts to grow. So yeah, so chromosomal abnormalities is something that I find like fairly often as people having answers from their doctors as to what happened. But it's funny because doctors say, oh, it's just a random event. Chromosomal abnormalities are just random. It's like, how is that random? How is that random when you're here? When every single day your body syncs up with the sun, and when you get around other women, we sync up our cycles. How are you telling me that that's random? Like, or like the moon, like, can influence how people feel. Like, that's not random. There's so many, like, I guess, intelligent things that we sort of take for granted, or we don't really recognize that happen in our world, that when you really look at people who have those abnormalities and have those, like, say, miscarriages or like things like chemical pregnancies, and you really look at them holistically, sometimes it's very easy to see, okay, guys, like, I know that you eat well, but like, it's often stress, it's often belief, and it's often things that are living in their body, that level of toxicity that they haven't addressed yet, that they could have lived with for 40 years if they're 40 years old. So there's so many, yeah, that's why I say there's so many factors, there's so many moving parts. So when you can remove all of the necessary roadblocks, you have a body that's like, make way, I'm going to do my thing, I've got everything I need here, and is able to really effortlessly create a life. And that is the body's blueprint. That is how we are built, like, that's how we are made.
Yeah. Beautiful. I'm going to start rounding up if that feels good. So I am doing this thing, and I'm borrowing it from Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett. He asks the guest a question that the previous guest has asked, and then you will leave a question for the next person. So the previous people, I don't know, I think you follow them actually. Dr. Seb Lomas, he's a holistic biological dentist.
Yes.
So I interviewed them. Seb and his wife Ali, and so they left one question each, not knowing who the next person would be. So the first question Seb asked was, what simple thing makes you smile or happy every day? So like that simple thing that just makes you go, that was nice.
My kids.
Yeah.
I know I'm saying that as like a fertility expert, but honestly, my children.
Yeah. And then Ali asked, what does the young version of you, like the very, very young version of you, need to hear from you right now? So if you could speak back to her, what would you say?
I went to a women's circle on Friday night, and the same question was asked. And my answer that dropped in was, it's safe to expand.
Yeah.
Because sometimes things feel new, but it's safe.
It's safe to expand. And what would be your question for the next person, not knowing who they might be?
Okay. What is the most transformative moment of your life to date? Okay.
Yay. I know who it's going to be, so I can't wait to ask them.
I can't wait to listen.
Yay. Okay, I love this so much. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I have learned a lot. I can't wait to listen to this again and be like taking notes and geeking out. Loved it. Yeah, if anyone's interested in your program, how do they contact you? Instagram DMs or
Yeah, Instagram's probably the easiest way. So you can find me at Dee Zibara, Zibara, or you can go to deezibara.com.
Amazing. Thank you so
much.
Amazing. I will speak to you soon. Have a nice day, evening.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. That was amazing. Thank you.